Hey everyone, Brian Zane here. I'm reporting to you from my wonderful hotel room in Manchester, England, across the Atlantic Sea. I'm getting ready for the Wrestling Media Con here this weekend, but while I was taking the train from London to Manchester today, I did get to watch the latest classic pay-per-view that I'll be reviewing as nominated by my Patreon backers, and there's a bit of an England theme this time around. It's WWF Insurrextion 2002. This aired on Sky Box Office, emanating from Wembley Arena in London, England on May 4th, 2002. This is technically the first Raw branded pay-per-view in the wake of the first brand split, with one notable exception. I'll tell you that in a little bit, but also the very historic pay-per-view this is. This is officially the final pay-per-view that broadcast under the WWF banner. The next pay-per-view they did 2 weeks later, Judgment Day, was the first WWE pay-per-view. So this was right at the very end of the WWF as we knew it before their big rebranding. Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler on commentary. If you watch this show on the network, be ready for a lot of very forced, ham-fisted English slang that Jerry Lawler will be dropping in every match. And all it does is just confuse Jim Ross.
And the fans here, they are absolutely loopy. They're loopy. He may be, well, he looks a little creamed if you ask me. Creamed? Yeah. What does that mean? Well, he's cream cracker. Well, look at our trainer's hair. He's going a bit Vera. That little pillage!
Insurrextion continues the rich tradition of pay-per-views that take place in the UK that are essentially glorified house shows. All the matches and all the setups for these matches are things you see on television, so from a storyline perspective, they do make sense and they do play along with the storylines. However, nothing you see in this show has any bearing on what happens in the Raws and SmackDowns after this. It's essentially these matches don't ever happen in terms of canon. Because this is a UK crowd, there are some chants throughout the night that you don't often hear in American arenas. Also, lots of air horns throughout, those have been totally removed, especially by this point in America. Also, one thing I thought was interesting, there was a sign that I pointed out in the crowd that said Kelomania. It had a picture of one of the characters from the Gorillas on it, and that was very familiar to me because I watched WrestleMania 19 later that year. I was there, and in the hard cam, that very same sign is there front and center. Well, now I know where that sign came from. Opening matches for the IC title as Eddie Guerrero defends against RVD, the man he beat for it 2 weeks prior at Backlash. If you know either of these guys just on paper, or if you've seen them work in general or against each other, you know you're in for a really exciting matchup here. This is a great way to open the show and get the fans riled up for the action to come. Fast work by RVD to start the match off. He does whiff the leg sweep, but they're able to recover it. Eddie gets the cutoff after running RVD's head into the stairs outside. Guerrero works the leg. At one point, RVD misses the 5-star frog splash, and he started to bleed from the mouth a little bit. Don't know what caused that per se. Guerrero grabs the title belt at the end of the match and shoves the referee, and the match just ends in a disqualification. So kind of disappointing end to the match proper after everything we saw leading up to that point. Eddie chases the referee around and back into the ring. He eats a kick by RVD. RVD hits his frog splash after changing direction in midair, and the segment ends with the fans happy despite no title change. I give this one 2.5 stars out of 4. Always excellent work by these two. The DQ finish, though, did disappoint me because for a match that is essentially non-canon for WWE, the fact there was no decisive finish for this matchup I thought was a little weird. I believe it's the only match in the entire show that has a DQ finish. So the fact that this is the one that has it, I think is a little weird. Backstage, Terry interviews Molly Holly and Jazz, and the two heels are just disgusted by what they see in the new Divas video. It is smut. It is trash, according to Molly Holly. And Terry gives them what for by showing them her boobs. That'll show them. That leads into our next match, women's tag action, as Trish Stratus and Jacqueline take on the aforementioned Molly Holly and Jazz. Jazz, of course, is the women's champion at this time. She retained the belt against Trish Stratus at Backlash. It's been a long time since I've heard Jazz's theme music, but when I heard it here, I thought, shouldn't Jazz's theme be, I don't know, a little more jazzy sounding? Jerry Lawler with one of his gross comments of the evening. He says, well, no wonder Jazz isn't in the Divas video. Look at her face, JR, haha. The heels get the jump on the faces early on to start the match. The ladies roll over the referee early on. A classic Divas era spot there. The crowd goes nuts for when Trish is tagged in. You know, for someone who is like the least experienced out of the four women in this match, I think she holds her own very well. I think she's very well protected, and she does a solid performance here. King calls her a fit bird during commentary. The heels work her over. Jacqueline accidentally screws over over her own partner at one point and keeps Trish from pinning Jazz with a backslide. So much of what Jackie does in this match is looks so snug and looks so like legit. I love it. She and Jazz in particular really add a lot of like legitimacy and hard-hitting action to this matchup. Molly to an extent as well does that too, but I think it's more on the side of Jackie and Jazz here. The commentary spends an awful lot of time talking about Molly Holly's virginity and Jazz's appearance. Jerry says that this match is making him Randy. This is just what it was like at the time. The heels go for a double Irish whip out of the corners, but then Jackie and Trish do-si-do. I love the do-si-do counter. Jackie hits Molly with a tornado DDT. Trish hits the Stratus faction on the champion Jazz, a double pin. Jerry Lawler still creepy, and the faces win. I give this match 2 stars out of 4. I think it was a very solid matchup here. Like I said earlier, for someone who didn't have as much experience as her partner and her opponent, Trish looked very good here, looked solid in the ring. At the end of the match, Jerry goes, "Foo-ah! Foo-ah!" Well, this time the New World Order was not on life support just yet, but they were well on their way. Up next, it's X-Pac versus Bradshaw. This is a follow-up from Backlash when Scott Hall beat Bradshaw at the pay-per-view. And in the previous weeks, X-Pac and the whole New World Order just gang beat Kane, and X-Pac stole his mask, which is why he's messing around with it backstage, saying, "I'm gonna do to Bradshaw what I did to Kane." Unmask him, I guess. But also X-Pac has the nunchucks. That was kind of his gimmick at the time, was whipping the nunchucks around. X-Pac's always had a very interesting gimmicks because a couple years before this, he came out with a can of Hansen's energy drink, and now he's on the nunchucks. Wouldn't it be great if he had a pair of nunchucks made out of cans of Hansen's energy drink? When I watched this match, all I could think of was, if these two guys wrestled today, you would never see them wrestle a match against each other in WWE, just because of the way they've kind of segregated their weight classes now. You would never see X-Pac, who was a cruiserweight, going against a super heavyweight in Bradshaw here, which is a shame because I think this match is a very good big little match. I think X-Pac more than holds his own. Like just the last classic show I reviewed, SummerSlam '99, you see X-Pac in a match with 3 dudes who are like twice his size, Undertaker, Kane, and Big Show, and he does great with that. And he does the same here with Bradshaw, and in today's WWE, you would never see these two wrestle each other, and that's kind of a shame. X-Pac, right as the match begins, as he's making his entrance, he just takes off one of the turnbuckle posts in the middle. He drags Bradshaw in and starts ramming his face into the exposed turnbuckle post. At one point, Brad does do one more headbutt into it, even though X-Pac's no longer holding onto his head. And now Bradshaw is bleeding. Why is the referee not calling this a DQ? This blatant use of the ring as a weapon here. X-Pac lights up Bradshaw with some loud chops. Corner punches turn into a powerbomb by Bradshaw as it begins to make his comeback. Bradshaw with a huge top rope shoulder block on X-Pac, who barely gets his foot on the ropes after that move. X-Pac goes for a crossbody. Bradshaw catches him in his trademark fallaway slam. Scott Hall, his fellow NWO bandmate, makes his way out to distract Bradshaw. He hits him with the nunchucks, but Bradshaw kicks out. Bradshaw avoids the Bronco Buster. X-Pac ducks the clothesline from hell, but Bradshaw hits Scott off the apron. A low blow while the referee is distracted. X Factor, X-Pac wins. I'm going to give it 2.5 stars. I think this is one of the stronger matches of the night. Again, great story told of big versus little, where X-Pac, who's the conniving, sniveling, small man heel, using his smarts and using the ring as a weapon to outsmart Bradshaw early on and get that advantage. It's realistic. It's doable in the confines of a wrestling match to have that story be told. And like I said, today you just wouldn't see that really happen that often. After a backstage interview with The Undertaker where he allows lots of pauses for what chance, we go to a hardcore championship match as Steven Richards defends against Booker T. First off, raise your hand if you forgot that Steven Richards was a hardcore champion around this time. This whole sequence of events just reeked of SmackDown 2's career mode, because here's what happened. Last week on Raw, Bubba Ray Dudley defended the title against Jazz, an intergender match. Steven Richards runs in and steals the title from Bubba Ray Dudley, and now Steven and Jazz are a duo at this point. It kind of predates the Steven Richards Victoria thing from the very next year or 2 years later. So then, in this UK show, Steven defends against that perennial hardcore title contender, Booker T. Okay. Booker starts out strong here. He tosses a bunch of weapons into the ring, and one by one, as each weapon is going in the ring, Stevie is tossing them out of the ring. Booker does whack him in the head with a cookie sheet, though. Fighting on the inside and outside, Stevie keeps trying to mount an offense, and Booker just immediately shuts him him down. This is like a super one-sided matchup when you look at it. It's like there's not a whole lot of like heel heat in this one. His biggest offensive maneuver, or the most time he's on offense, is Stevie, is in a chin lock, where he's like not doing a whole lot of stuff. But it's like Booker just kind of kicks his ass every time he gets a chance to. Like Stevie will get like 1 or 2 moves in, like a low blow here or there, or whatever, or a move or chops, and Booker just shuts him down immediately. The balance of this match is what stuck out to me as something that's like just didn't sit well with me. As Stevie has Booker in the aforementioned chin lock, JR brings up comparisons between Booker T and Lennox Lewis. Wonder why? And then Booker fires back up out of the chin lock, reverses the Irish whip into the corner. Stevie runs into the trash can, and Jerry with probably his best line of the night, where he says, "I think your wrestling match is broken out here, JR." And it's true. This match was definitely not your average, not your typical hardcore title match at this time in the company. Richards with the Steven kick, not the Stevie kick, the Steven kick, but Booker kicks out. Booker hits the bookend and wins the match. So Booker is the new hardcore champion. But wait, out comes Crash Holly, former multiple-time champion, to roll up Booker T, gets a 3 count, and now he's the new hardcore champion. He taunts in the ring, he dances, he just looks at the hand thing, but then Booker rolls him back up, and now Booker's the new champion again. And you think that's the end, but wait, there's more, because out come Tommy Dreamer and Just Incredible to beat down Booker. They want to take the belt from him. They set up a table, but it goes nowhere. Booker thwarts the 2 of those guys, and then Booker celebrates a bit, but then Stevie Richards and Jazz both gang up on Booker T. Stevie pins Booker, puts him through the table after 2 attempts of trying to get him through the table, but the first one doesn't take, and so then puts him through the table, pins him, and Stevie is the champion once again. The status quo is maintained, and there you go. I give this match 1.5 stars. If you don't include the post-match chaos, which I thought was very entertaining, the match itself just wasn't really doing it for me. Not only was the balance really weird, it was also, you get the feeling that Booker and Stevie didn't want to wrestle a hardcore match, and they wanted to actually have a match, but they were required to put the weapons in because of the stipulation. Like they told them, you can wrestle if you want, but you have to use X number of weapons X number of times. And that was pretty much like how it felt to me. It just felt like they was almost forced to use the weapons and forced to make it hardcore. I think these two would have a great, just straight up wrestling contest, which is what it was if you take the weapons out. Up next, the Hardy Boyz versus Brock Lesnar and Shawn Stasiak. A very peculiar tag team, but there is a bit of reasoning for why this is the case. First off, Brock had just debuted for the company on the main roster after WrestleMania 18. At Backlash, Brock had his first official match against Jefe Hardy, and he basically just killed Jeff. It was the match ended due to referee stoppage, and then the next night on Raw, Brock did the same thing to Matt, kind of leading in. This was Brock's first real feud in his debut, was against the Hardy Boyz, and who could forget? I forget if this was before or after Backlash, but there's this classic moment where Jeff just swings through the fences with a chair and just hits Brock right in the face, and it makes the loudest clank noise in the world, and yet Brock just no-sells it. It was just a great moment there. Backstage, Paul Heyman is telling Shawn Stasiak to stand on the corner and stay on Planet Stasiak. Don't be involved in this match. Let Brock do all the work. They were forced to find a partner because the Hardys wanted a tag team match. So basically they found Stasiak because he was a vessel. And actually, Brock has a line of dialogue in this, which surprised me because I don't think he talked for a while. So this is actually, I think, his first spoken word in the company.
The beating I gave to you on Raw will be like a walk in the park compared to what I do to you tonight.
As the Hardys make their entrance, JR tells the viewing audience that Lita just had neck surgery on Tuesday after she broke her neck during the filming of her role in the show Dark Angel. And Jerry Lawler goes, well, why isn't she here? And JR, as a matter of fact, says she had surgery for her broken neck on Tuesday. Lesnar and Heyman go down the ramp by themselves, and Stasiak runs down the ramp past them and gets things started. He's raring to go. He just wants this match to start off, and he wants to play a part in this thing. They talk about Stasiak and how he listens to the voices in his head, and then Jerry Lawler has one of the weirdest lines in history.
I do what the voices in my pants tell me to do.
Lesnar saves Stasiak from poetry in motion and tags himself in, and just Lesnar whomps on Matt for a few minutes. JR does a great job selling and putting over how powerful and scary Brock Lesnar is. I would venture that Lesnar's run of dominance in his first year of the company would not have been as impactful and not have been as successful as it was if Jim Ross wasn't there to paint the picture with his words and to really put over what kind of a monster Brock Lesnar was at this time. Lesnar runs his shoulder into the corner, and Stasiak, after some thinking about it, tags himself into a bit of a pop. Matt tags Jeff into a much louder pop. Twist of fate, swanton onto Stasiak. The Hardys win the match, so technically this This is Lesnar's first loss on the main roster. His undefeated streak ended way sooner than everyone says it did. But then after the match, Lesnar hits both Hardys with the F5, beats up his own tag partner for good measure. Lesnar's lame first music plays, and that is the segment. I'm going to give it 1.5 stars out of 4. It's probably the most competitive squash match of all time, if that makes any sense, because it was really one-sided. Lesnar's only like impact he took was a self-inflicted move, and like the Hardys got nothing on him. So it was pretty one-sided from the get-go, but the Hardys made Lesnar look great. Stasiak fulfilled his role as kind of a comedy figure in this matchup, and he ultimately was sacrificed to Lesnar at the end. So there you go. They show a video package talking about the big charity dinner the company had for the Make-A-Wish Foundation the night before, and then after the package airs, Lawler goes, "Well, how many pounds did my signed 8x10 go for?" And JR goes, "Well, I bought it. I'm your good friend." Backstage, Coach interviews William Regal, who calls his opponent Spike Dudley a little shite-hawk. I do love every time Regal would cut a promo when he was in England, because he almost always cut the kind of promo where it's like he simultaneously puts over and bags on the UK and England, where he says like, it's like I'm an Englishman. I'm proud to be from this country, but everyone else here is stupid and terrible. That's a great kind of promo. I love it. That leads into this European Championship match as Spike Dudley defends against William Regal. Last month, Spike outsmarted Regal for the championship match. Regal hit a pair of brass knuckles into one of the turnbuckle pads, and Spike just immediately pulls it out, decks Regal with it while the referee's back is turned, and he wins the match that way. So that was a great little moment for Spike there to win the title. Kind of for Regal's tactics to backfire on him, I thought was really great booking there. Spike goes to the Dudley dog, but as he lands, he appears to hurt his ankle on the landing. He starts like selling like death, like, "Oh, I heard it pop" and everything. And then the referee brings the trainer out. The trainer cuts off the laces of his boot. They remove the boot, and the trainer says, "Oh, I gotta take you to the back because you're hurt." Meanwhile, the match is still technically going on. The bell has not been rung to call the match off. So as Spike is being carried off by the referee and the trainer, Regal just walks up and attacks Spike from behind, beats him up, throws him back in the ring, and then after he hits him with his big power move, he doesn't want to pin him. He picks him back up. He's toying with him. But of course, that would come back to bite him in the ass, because Spike would hit him with a small package out of nowhere. 1, 2, 3. Spike somehow, with a bum leg, is able to retain the championship. He doesn't celebrate for long, though, because then Regal knocks him out with the power of the punch, and he walks away. Just saying in kayfabe, though, why wouldn't they have stopped the match, even after he's being carried off? And once Regal's beating him up, the referee, in kayfabe again, should have rung the bell there. I'm going to give it a 0.5 star out of 4. It's not much of a match, but I do appreciate the story they told here with Spike and outsmarting Regal yet again, even though, again, logistically, the match should have just ended after the ankle injury. In our semi-main event, we have Stone Cold Steve Austin taking on The Big Show. How we got to this match was at Backlash, Austin fought Undertaker for the #1 contendership for the undisputed title, and Ric Flair, the owner of Raw at the time, was the special guest referee. The match ended in controversy. Austin had his foot on the ropes, but Flair apparently did not see it because Taker's body was obstructing Flair's view. And so now you've got this kind of rift between the owner of Raw, Flair, and Austin, who are both faces at this time, but that dynamic would change as the weeks go on here. And so then actually the night after Backlash, Flair put them in a match, Austin and Big Show versus X-Pac and Scott Hall, but as soon as the show gets tagged in, it's one of his like 18 or so heel turns when he chokeslams Steve Austin and joins the New World Order as their newest member, which is a nice throwback, by the way, because Big Show, when he was the Giant, was a member of the New World Order. So a nice little bit of continuity there to have him come back to it when it was revived in WWF. As the match begins, Flair shows up in a referee shirt yet again, and he declares himself the special guest enforcer to stand at ringside during this matchup here. And Lawler has this very interesting line. I couldn't help but notice all these weird lines he said in this show. It's that weird, like, jet-lagged house show kind of feel you get from this whole thing, where he says, putting on a ref shirt doesn't make you a ref any more than standing in the garage makes you a car. And JR just goes, what? The match begins with some lockups and the Big Show showing off his strength. This match by far has the crowd being the loudest and like chantiest they've been the entire night. There's been some moments where they were awake in some points, but they were kind of subdued compared to when Austin comes out, because the crowd goes nuts for Austin. My favorite chant in this matchup is when they chant "You fat bastard" at the Big Show. You'll hear that no fewer than 4 times throughout the course of this match.
Man's feet.
Austin finally breaking up the monotony of the lockups by throwing hands at the Big Show. There's also a great use of horns and chants working together because there's the
Austin not gonna let that happen. Yeah, that'd be the smartest thing you could.
Show knocks Austin down repeatedly at first, but Austin's able to stomp and just club Show down to the mat. Every attack Austin lands here during this time period gets a what chant. This was like really the peak of the what chants as far as in-ring stuff goes. The chant, of course, has lived on forever in terms of promos, but of course when Austin wrestled this time, every stomp and every punch he hit was met with a what chant, which is unfortunate because that's all Austin really could do at the time. Austin works the leg, but Show flattens Austin with a body slam, stands on his back. He locks Austin in the bear hug, and Austin even bites Show's nose to break up the hold. Austin is able to fight back, hit the Lou Thesz press, and the crowd is alive once again. Big Show goes for a clothesline. Austin ducks, and Show nails the referee. Austin hits the stunner. The NWO show up. Flair chases off Hall and X-Pac with some mops that he almost drops. In comes Kevin Nash, who has the nunchucks. Austin fights him off and hits the stunner on Nash and Show. The first referee is revived and counts the 3. So Flair comes back after the match, praises Austin, gives him the beers. He goes into his wild voice. He's got the two different voices when he cuts his promos. There's the solemn, serious, neutral voice he has here. But then when he gets into it, when he's alive, man, he's like, I told you I'd never let you down. You're the man. Woo! And so then Austin kind of gets in his face and yells what at him a lot. He says, you want a beer with me? You want a cerveza? You want suds? A cerveza. And that's not me just repeating myself. He says cerveza twice in 3 instances.
A beer. A cerveza, a brewski, a cerveza.
So Austin agrees to have a beer with Flair. They toast and they drink, but Austin hits Flair with the stunner. The best part of that is when Flair does not even register the kick to the gut. He stands up there until he finally gets taken down with the stunner portion. So that's the end of that whole segment. Flair would fully turn heel a little bit after this point here, and so Austin and Flair would have a feud. They have a match on Raw that Austin won that made Flair Austin's servant, but they really never went anywhere with that storyline because that was the famous night in which Austin left the company. He took his ball and went home was the popular phrase of the time. It was after Austin was booked in a match with Brock Lesnar on Raw in kind of a throwaway match, like a King of the Ring qualifier, and Austin walked away because he didn't want to do the job in a match that had no build. If you want to learn more about this whole moment, there's a lot of literature and a lot of podcasts that talk about that, so you do you and you check that stuff out. So then they kind of had to scramble. Then afterwards, Flair, who was a heel authority figure at this point, then got thrown into a feud with Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit. I think he kind of turned face again after that because Guerrero was definitely the heel in that situation. So Flair and Guerrero fought at King of the Ring. But yeah, that whole Austin storyline with Flair totally went up in smoke when he left. And by the way, I'm going to give this match 1 star out of 4. It's pretty one-dimensional. Big Show couldn't do much in general, and by this point in his career, Austin was even worse. The crowd ate everything up in this matchup, but just objectively speaking, this is probably one of the most boring matches of the night. In our main event, here's a couple of names you've been hearing a lot of recently as the company's been building up to their Australia show coming up. It's Triple H versus The Undertaker. The more things change, the more they stay the same, I guess. This is the only inter-brand matchup of the entire card as Triple H was a SmackDown star at the time. Here's how we get to this matchup. At Backlash, Triple H was the undisputed champion, but the same night that Undertaker became the #1 contender, he also cost Triple H his championship against Hulk Hogan in the main event. And so the Taker and Triple H have been invading each other's shows for a couple of weeks leading up to this matchup with a lot of just one guy beating up the other, essentially. These guys start off fast and furious. The force that Triple H hits the high knee early in the match, he gets knocked over and falls down. It looks like he just puts everything into that move early on. Taker with a huge back body drop he takes. The height he gets is crazy here. Taker goes for old school, but then Triple H jerks Undertaker off the top rope.
Jerking the Undertaker off the top rope.
It was kind of a trip watching this match because it was so weird to see The Undertaker, A, mobile, and B, a heel. I think heel Biker Taker was kind of underrated. I think that he did really well as a heel during this time period, but the problem was the longer he did it, he just got cheered no matter what he did, and so him being a heel just didn't work out after a while. It was babyface again just by default. Anyway, he gets the cutoff on Triple H after dropping him over the top rope. Taker works the surgically repaired leg, and the air horns are out in full force for this match, more than any other time tonight. Triple H throws Taker into the ropes, and the top rope breaks. You don't see that very often, and when you do, it's always kind of a surprise, like, oh God, like it's kind of a shock to your system because you're not used to that happening. And so we'll see how these guys recover here. It is just a physical match, just beating the hell out of each other, driving each other into the corner and that broken top turnbuckle. Taker goes for a choke slam, then Triple H tries to counter with, I think it's a DDT, but the angle's not very good, so you see a lot of air between Taker's head and the canvas. Taker does hit the chokeslam after the corner bump. He brings in a chair. Triple H hits it with his knee, and Taker hits himself in the face with it. Taker does hit the snake eyes in the corner, but Triple H recovers with another flying knee, then the pedigree to win the match. I'm going to give this one 3 stars out of 4. Easily the match of the night. And again, just looking at these two and their history together, when you see what they did at WrestleMania 17 before this, what you see here in this show, and the feud they would have later this year once Taker became the undisputed champion after beating Hogan, they would have a match the next month for the championship and keep that going. And of course, we've seen all their battles in the years since, or many of them at least. I'm sure some of you have at least. But yeah, this was definitely a great main event to cap off the show. My final grade for Insurrextion 2002 is going to be a C+. I had to kind of grade this show on a curve because of the fact that this is essentially a house show with a good production value. Nothing in this show really matters in terms of canon to the overall product. So, really what does anything here mean? I just had to look at it from an objective standpoint, just as a show overall in a bubble and see how it did. I think it was a very, middle line show. You had your good stuff like Eddie and RVD, even though the DQ finish kind of sucked. X-Pac and Bradshaw was a big surprise to me how good that match was. Brock and Stasiak versus the Hardys, if only for the story of Stasiak being super eager to get in the match and ultimately paying for it. I think it was a nice little storyline there, and Brock being dominant. Early Brock is the best Brock in my opinion. And then Triple H versus Undertaker was a great match. Then, the things that I didn't like so much was the Spike versus Regal match. I think, the story I liked, but just the whole fact that, logically speaking, the referee should have thrown the match out. Again, very inconsistent way they kind of use those rules and make it real in that kind of case. And then the semi-main of Austin versus Big Show. The star power was there, but the match quality was not. Well, I hope you enjoyed my review of Insurrextion 2002. If you want to play a role in determining which classic shows I review, be they good, bad, or somewhere in between, go to patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret, become a $10 backer or above, and you'll have the chance to nominate shows for me to review in the future. Well, next time on the Classic Pay-Per-View Review, it's not Evolution, but it will be a mystery. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.